Hello, friends. As you would have seen in the news, there has been a cyclone on the east coast of India, and it has caused a lot of destruction, mainly in Chennai, coastal Tamil Nadu, and coastal Andhra. So today we'll discuss about that cyclone, and how it was formed, and also from UPSC exam perspective, we'll see how the cyclones are formed, what are the tropical cyclone and temperate cyclones, and from mains perspective, we'll also understand how the cyclones are named and what are the classification of cyclone based on the speed and wind velocity, and also we'll see some guidelines which are issued by NDMA to manage cyclone as a disaster. Okay, so let's start. First, let's understand what was the news. So cyclone Michaung. So this term is given by Myanmar, and it is pronounced as Michaung, cyclone Michaung, and the word means strength and resilience. So this cyclone was tropical cyclone which was formed in Bay of Bengal, and it has recently made landfall near Nellore district of Andhra Pradesh, and it was classified by IMD as severe cyclonic storm. And it has brought, as you have seen, it has brought heavy rains in coastal Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh. So this was the news regarding the cyclone. Now let's understand how actually the cyclones are formed. So we'll understand how tropical cyclones are formed. So the tropical cyclones are violent storms that originate over oceans in tropical areas and move over to coastal areas, bringing about large-scale destruction. Now, basically, what happens is when the ocean sea surface temperature is high, so the ocean water, we can see here, warm ocean water evaporates and rises in the atmosphere. As it rises, the temperature decreases, and the water vapor turns into the water droplets, and clouds are formed. And when the conversion happens from water vapor to water droplets, a latent heat of condensation is released. What happens to that is the temperature again rises a little bit, and which causes the moisture to rise more upwards. So we can see continuous upwelling of air is there near the sea. Now, due to which what happens on the sea surface, there is a low pressure formed. Now, low pressure, we know that wind travels from high pressure to low pressure. So due to this extreme low pressure, it attracts the wind from high pressure areas. Now, this is the main reason why cyclones are caused. Now, let's see what are the conditions favorable for tropical cyclone. So, we have seen that large sea surface with temperature higher than 27 degrees centigrade. So, to form a cyclone, we need a higher temperature, because the first necessary step is that there should be a low pressure and the moist air should evaporate. Now, for this, we need a temperature of at least 27 degrees centigrade or higher. Now, this is the reason also why there are more cyclones in Bay of Bengal rather than Arabian Sea, because we know that Bay of Bengal, the temperature here are a little bit higher when compared to the Arabian Sea coast. Now, presence of Coriolis force enough to create a cyclonic vortex. Now, what is Coriolis force is, we know that our Earth, it revolves from west to east. It rotates from west to east. So what happens is so this causes a Coriolis force. So what happens is in northern hemisphere, if any wind travels from year to year, it will not go in a straight direction, but it will deviate towards its right. Similarly, in southern hemisphere, it will deviate towards its left. Now, this is the Coriolis force is required for formation of cyclone. Now, this is the reason why the cyclones are not formed near equator. Tropical cyclones are not formed near equator because, as we know, near equator, the Coriolis force is least. So that's why there is not enough Coriolis force at the equator for the formation of tropical cyclone. Now, small variations in vertical wind speed is one more requirement for tropical cyclone. A pre-existing weak low pressure or low-level cyclonic circulation. So there should be a pre-existing low pressure here to attract the winds, as wind travels from high pressure to low pressure. And upper divergence above the sea level system. So upper divergence, which means that once the warm moist air rises, once the air rises from low pressure area, after reaching upper levels of atmosphere, it diverges in both the directions. So this kind of formation is necessary for the formation of cyclone. Now, these are the conditions which are required for tropical cyclone. Now, the cyclone, due to the Coriolis force, the cyclone rotates anti-clockwise in northern hemisphere and clockwise in southern hemisphere. As we know that because of Coriolis force, the wind will deflect towards the right in northern hemisphere. So once the the low pressure area is formed, suppose this is the low pressure area, it attracts wind and it attracts wind, and due to the Coriolis force, the wind deflects towards the right, and that's this kind of anti-clockwise circulation is formed. This causes a cyclonic storm. Now, see, this picture will give you more clear idea of how cyclones are formed. So, first, water evaporates, and once the water evaporates, a low pressure column is formed here, and which attracts the winds. And due to the Coriolis force, the wind moves in an anti-clockwise direction in northern hemisphere, and this causes a cyclonic storm. Now, in a cyclone, the central area where there is low pressure is called eye of the cyclone, and this is usually the area where there is least disturbance. And but from the eye towards both the sides, suppose this is the eye of the cyclone, both the sides there will be clouds will be formed, and it will cause heavy rains and storms both the side. But near the eye of the cyclone, it will be usually very calm. Now, what happens is, for cyclone to exist or to continue, there should be continuous supply of moisture. So, as long as the cyclone is on the ocean, due to the ocean water, there is continuous supply of moisture, there is continuous evaporation of water and formation of cloud. Now, what happens? Suppose this is the coast of India. If cyclone is formed in the Bay of Bengal, it will come, and once it reaches the land, it's called the landfall of cyclone, the moisture supply will cut off. Then the cyclone cannot exist. So, once the landfall happens, the cyclone will cease to exist. But before the landfall, because of this cloud bands in both the sides, it will cause heavy rains, heavy storms, and destruction in those coastal areas. Now, this is the basic idea of how tropical cyclones are formed. Now, cyclones are known by different names in different regions. In Indian Ocean, it are called cyclone. In South China Sea, these are called typhoons. Near West Australia, they are called willy willies. And in American, near Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, they are called hurricane. So these are the different names for cyclone in the world. Now we'll understand how the cyclones are actually named. Now, current cyclone which is ongoing was called Michaung, and this name was given by Myanmar. So first, understand why naming of cyclone is important is, once you name the cyclone, it makes it easy for disaster management or to manage the activities and to study about its cyclone for future reference. So this all, for all this, it is necessary that we give a name to a cyclone for a reference purpose. Now, the naming of cyclone is governed by World Meteorological Organization. They oversee the management of rotating name list tailored for each tropical cyclone basis. So basically what happens is, we have seen that cyclone occurs in the various parts of world. Now, each part is divided into a zone, and there are 6 such zones called regional specialized meteorological centers. Now, each zone in that will prepare a list of name in advance. Like, for example, in Indian Ocean, for the Indian Ocean, there are 13 nations. So each nation will put 13 names, and a table will be found, and on rotating basis those names will be used. So if we have to see, this is the example of the table. Now, these are the countries in Indian Ocean region: Bangladesh, India, Iran, etc. Each country has given 13 names. Now, naming will start from column 1. It will start from here, and it will go on. It will reach. So currently, this name was given Michaung, which we can see is given by Myanmar. So this kind of table will be maintained by the regional center, and that's how cyclone will be named. Now, thus names will be given sequentially column wise, that we have seen. Now, the name of tropical cyclone over North Indian Ocean will not be repeated. Once it is used, it will cease to be used again. So once a name is given to cyclone, it cannot be repeated. Now, this is regarding the naming of cyclone. Now, let's understand classification of cyclone. Now, IMD, the Indian Meteorological Department, classifies cyclone based on the wind speed. So basically, currently we have seen that cyclone Michaung was given a classification of severe cyclonic storm because it has reached the speeds of up to 110 kmph. So basically, based on the speeds, so suppose it is less than 31, it is just classified as low pressure. If the speed increases from 61 to 88, it is classified as cyclonic storm. And if it is more than 221, it is recorded as super cyclone. So it should be more than 117, it is recorded as super cyclone. So these are the classification of cyclone based on the wind velocity. Now, this classification is necessary so that disaster management activities can take place according to the nature of the cyclone. Now, IMD also gives color-coded warnings for cyclone-prone areas. Now, these color-coded warnings are necessary for people to easily understand what kind of storm is coming, and they can prepare themselves accordingly. So currently, an orange alert was given before the cyclone came in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. So these are the cyclones. Green means there is no severe weather expected. Red is just be aware, there are chances. Orange means be prepared, remain vigilant. So there are chances of high destruction. And red means immediate action is required. So these are the color coded classification given by IMD. Now, let's understand what are the NDMA guidelines for cyclone with regards to disaster management. So this is important from GS3 perspective of mains. So NDMA classifies cyclone into two broad categories: tropical and extratropical. So tropical cyclone we have seen in previous slides how it is formed. We'll also see about extratropical. These are also called temperate cyclones. Okay. Now, what are the NDMA guidelines in brief? It says that there should be an early warning system. Basically, there should be a warning system which gives when the cyclone will occur, when will be the landfall, and how much destruction it can cause, so that people can prepare accordingly. Now, aircraft probing of cyclone facility. So, NDMA requires that government should have an aircraft probing. So, this can be a manned or unmanned aerial vehicle which sees the cyclone from upper levels and can understand and study the nature of cyclone and when it is, and can give a precise warning. And then national disaster communication infrastructure. Now, NDMA guidelines also require that communications should be maintained in such a way that it is disaster proof. For example, in cyclone prone areas, there should be always an availability of satellite telephones, because when cyclone occurs, there are chances that telephone lines will be destroyed. Now, to coordinate disaster management efforts, there should be some communication which is disaster proof, like satellite telephones. So those kind of guidelines are given in National Disaster Communication Infrastructure. Now, expanding the warning dissemination outreach. So these warnings, which should be given through DTH, satellite radios, and various other means, so it reaches the general public at right time. These are the some measures given by NDMA. There are also some structural measures. Structural measures means how the infrastructure or how the infrastructure can be made and maintained to reduce the risk of destruction during a disaster. So it says that of structural safety of lifeline infrastructure in coastal area should be maintained. So lifeline infrastructure will be something like hospitals or rescue efforts. Whatever such kind of infrastructure is there, they should be immune to cyclone. They should be made in such a way that they are resistant to the destruction caused by cyclone. Multi-purpose cyclone shelters and coastal mounds. So cyclone shelters, during the cyclone, the people can be rehabilitated to such cyclone shelters. Then cyclone resistant design standards for housing schemes. Then building all-weather roads between habitation and cyclone shelters. So there should be all-weather roads, and such transport means should not be destroyed during the cyclone. So such kind of infrastructure is required. Now, maintaining capacity of drains and canals. So this is to ensure that the heavy rains during the cyclone don't cause flooding. So that's why drainage should be maintained. And construction of saline embankments to prevent ingress of saline water associated with cyclonic storm surge. So what happens during cyclone is, in coastal areas, the saline water can come into the coastal area and can destroy the water, fresh water availability, like lakes and all. So what the guideline says, construction of saline embankments to prevent. So we can construct something like mangroves. Mangroves will absorb the storm surge and will reduce the impact of the coastal erosion. So these are some NDMA guidelines given for cyclone. Now, as we see that NDMA classifies cyclone as tropical and extratropical or temperate, let's just understand what is basic difference between tropical cyclone and temperate cyclone. Now, before that, basically temperate cyclone, they are formed in the latitude of 35 to 65 degree north and south. So they are not formed in the tropic region, but in extratropical region. Now, what happens is, we have seen tropical cyclone formed due to low pressure formation, but temperate cyclone are formed due to warm and collision of warm air front and cold air front. So warm air front is nothing but there is a warm air, there is a mass of warm air in particular area, there is a mass of cold air in particular area. Now this move, and when they come in contact, they form a front. Now this front is called frontogenesis, and this causes rains. So this kind of cyclone is called as temperate cyclone. Now we have seen what are the main differences is, tropical cyclone is in tropical areas, that is 10 to 30 degree north and south of equator, and temperate cyclone is 35 to 65 degree north and south of equator. Now frontal system is absent in tropical cyclone, but the main genesis of temperate cyclone is front. Because of formation of front only, the temperate cyclone occurs. Now tropical cyclone can form only in seas, because we know that there should be a constant supply of moisture, which is possible only on seas, but that's not for temperate cyclone. It can form both on land and seas. Now, tropical cyclones are much greater and destructive, but comparatively less destructive temperate cyclones are. Now, we have seen that tropical cyclones generally move from east to west. but temperate cyclone move from west to east. Now, on India, we see that tropical cyclones affect both the coast. Even on Arabian Sea, we have cyclones, even on Bay of Bengal, but majorly it occurs on Bay of Bengal coast. And temperate cyclone, they bring rains to northwest of India. This is called as western disturbances. So in northwest of India, sometimes we see in news that there are rains during the winter season. Now that rains occur on because of something called western disturbances, which are due to the temperate cyclones. Now these are the difference between tropical and temperate cyclone. Now this, let's see some questions from prelims which were asked in previous year from this topic. So it was asked in 2020. Consider the following statement: jet streams occur in northern hemisphere only. Only some cyclones develop an eye. The temperature inside the eye of cyclone is nearly 10 degrees lesser than that of surroundings. Now, first let's focus on third statement. It says that temperature inside the eye of cyclone is 10 degrees centigrade lesser. But we have seen that to form a cyclone, the low pressure area should be there. And for low pressure, we need that temperature should be 27 degrees centigrade high or higher. So basically, it is reverse. The temperature at the eye of the cyclone is actually higher. So third statement is wrong, which means that this B and D will be cancelled out. Now jet streams occur in northern hemisphere only. So jet stream actually occur in both northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. It is covered in geography. So first statement is also wrong. So which gives only answer as C, only 2. Only some cyclones develop an eye. So because there are some extratropical cyclones which are formed due to front and not necessarily they have an eye. So that's why option 2 is right. Let's see some mains question which are asked regarding the cyclone. First is tropical cyclone are largely confined to South China Sea, Bay of Bengal and Gulf of Mexico. Now reasons. So basically it means to us that why tropical cyclones are formed in these regions only. So basically this means we have to write what are the conditions favorable for formation of cyclone. And then we should justify that such conditions are only available in this region. And that's why the cyclones are formed only in this region. Now next is the recent cyclone on the east coast of India was called Phylline. How are the tropical cyclones named across the world? Now this we have seen that how World Meteorological Organization oversees, and there are regional centers which see the naming of the cyclone. And you can conclude with why naming of cyclone is necessary. Okay. One more question is discuss the meaning of color-coded weather warnings for cyclone-prone areas given by IMD. This was asked in 2022. So we have seen what are the color-coded warnings IMD gives, and you can write those exactly the way they are. And you can also write a small conclusion at why such color-coded warnings are necessary, because it can give people exact warning. People can know what the impact of cyclone will be, and they can prepare themselves, and even it will help in disaster management activities. So these are some questions which are asked regarding cyclone from mains. Okay, that's it for cyclone. Thank you.